Welcome back after the break. While we're talking about Michigan and Michigan State, there's been some off-season issues for them.
Yes, they got the feds looking into how they've handled sexual assaults for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's going to come back to haunt them, I believe.
It says the University of Michigan and Michigan State University are under scrutiny by federal officials who are investigating how alleged sexual assaults were handled at the state's two largest schools. On Tuesday, the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights confirmed it's investigating 2 complaints of sexual violence against the allegations at Michigan State and 1 complaint at the University of Michigan.
The feds are getting tired of colleges hushing things up.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
And it doesn't really say if it was football players or not. So, well, the one at Michigan involves the
one of the football players.
One of the football players. We'll have to see how that goes.
We'll see how that pans out. But somebody's got to get control of those things. And like we were talking to, we've had 4 Georgia players get arrested this week.
Yeah.
And
you mentioned it last week when Clemson's got arrested. You know, you told Georgia to be watching out.
Yeah, we couldn't even get a week away without Clemson losing 4. And now, so I guess that's going to even the Clemson and the Georgia game out now if they just suspend all the starters.
Yeah. The Georgia players were arrested for theft by dissection. They weren't dissecting anything. theft of deception. They were cashing checks twice.
Well, I'd like to do that.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. And then Missouri players are 2 basketball, 2 football, smoking pot. So, I mean, you got to get a handle on that.
Let's move on to Ohio State. They open up at Navy. We talked about this a few weeks ago. That's not going to be an easy game for them.
No, it's not.
Virginia Tech, Kent State, and Cincinnati are their non-conference games. So it's going to be a rough first 2 weeks for Ohio State.
Well, I've got Ohio State going 9-3 or 8-4, and that depends on the Central Florida game. I mean, the Navy game. The Navy game. And I'm looking for Navy to upset them. And I don't know if it'll be an upset.
Well, most of the schools around the country have started their spring practice. Ohio State started, and Urban Meyer's to-do list this spring, he's got to replace 4 offensive starters on the offensive line. And going into Navy that first week, and then with Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech and the way his defense usually plays, it's not going to be easy on that front
I'm
four.
looking at 2 losses for Ohio State. We can go ahead and get them out of the way.
They do get Braxton Miller back, but he's had surgery on his shoulder, and he's going to miss all spring.
Yes,
so they said he'll keep Miller reps, will help him improve, but the growth of a quarterback will remain a concern headed into the summer and fall camps.
Mental reps is a whole lot different than the real thing.
It's different than getting hit every now and then. And they got to replace Carlos Hyde.
Yes.
Their running back. And that was 50% of their offense.
You're not kidding. What, 2,300 yards last season?
Yeah. And I think they're talking about Ezekiel Elliott to replace Hyde. He was a 4-star recruit in 2011.
He had 1,500 yards.
1,500 yards on a.
He only played in 11 games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's because Hyde never came off the field. They couldn't do anything until he got out there, and then him and Braxton Miller would run the ball. And the Guyton kid, the backup quarterback, who I thought was better than Braxton Miller, he's not there. But they play Maryland, at Maryland. This is in their conference games. Rutgers at home, so those are 2 wins right there. Then they're at Penn State.
Penn State's going to take them this year.
I think so, too. That's Penn State, we'll talk about them next. That's not going to be a given for anybody this year playing them. Illinois, they'll probably win that game. Michigan State, I don't think they'll win that game.
I don't think they will either. And I think Minnesota's going to give some teams some fits this year.
Yeah.
They're always right there in the middle of the road. But, I mean, they had a good year last year. What, 8-4?
I think so. And then they play Indiana, and we're looking at a schedule here that it's the helmet schedule, and every time I see Indiana and those helmets, goodness gracious, that's the ugliest helmet I've ever seen.
I tell you it is.
Then they finish with Michigan at home, but they don't have Northwestern on the schedule this year. Northwestern, I guess, gave them too big of a fit last year, so
they just barely won that game.
They're not playing them this year. But Ohio State, I don't think they'll be in the playoffs. and we'll talk about later who we think's going to win the East and West. Let's move on to Penn State. Open up with Central Florida at home.
And that's going to be a good ball game.
Then they have the Akron Zips, Terry Bowden's bunch. Then they're at Rutgers. That's a conference game.
They'll take Rutgers.
Then they have UMass at home. So
Marcus Camby's not playing.
so,
UMass, I love those basketball teams UMass had, though.
Well, Penn State's non-conference schedule is Central Florida, Akron, UMass, and Temple.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have a real tough conference schedule either. They have Rutgers, Northwestern, which I think will be a good game, at Michigan, Ohio State, Maryland, at Indiana, and those ugly helmets again. Temple, Temple's not in their conference. Illinois and Michigan State.
Michigan State's that's going to be the game this year.
I
That'll
think
be
so.
good. I believe that'll decide the conference championship right there.
I do too. And it's at home. They play Michigan State at home.
They sure do. Sure do. And I tell you, I'm pulling for Franklin. I mean, he 3 9-win seasons at Vanderbilt. Takes off. He's from Pennsylvania, so he goes home. I mean, he's got it made right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all behind him, and everybody knows Penn State, and everybody loves Penn State.
Well, when they hired Bill O'Brien after everything that took place up there was still that lingering, of everything that had happened. Well, when they hired Franklin, I think that kind of all.
Yeah, they wanted to sever ties with anything.
And I
and
think it
start
changed
fresh.
that. It changed the perception of Penn State.
Yes, it did.
Just when he walked in the gym out there,
the students, the students went crazy for him, and I think that's great. I mean,
what have you got? What do you think they're going to finish? What have you got them?
I got them finishing 10-2.
I would agree with that.
And,
I think the only two toughest games, Ohio State and Michigan State.
Mm-hmm. And they don't have Nebraska, which is a plus for Penn State this year.
The Northwestern game, maybe, but I think they'll win that.
I think they will.
And other than Ohio State and Michigan State, their conference schedule: Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Rutgers, Michigan, and Northwestern. Those are all very capable wins right there.
Well, they sure are. But Penn State comes out playing Central Florida.
Yeah,
and I think that's going to be a game right there that's going to set the tone for Penn State. I think they'll win that game, but hey, you can't take anybody lightly. In Central Florida, I know Leach. The old Georgia Tech coach.
O'Leary.
Yeah. Mike Leach. I don't know where he's at.
He's at Washington State.
Yeah, and they
got Rutgers first week.
They sure do. Yes.
But Penn State, just from looking at this schedule, the first week they have the toughest game of that division.
Mm-hmm.
Move down to Rutgers. They open up with Mike Leach at Washington State. Then they have their other non-conference games are Howard, Navy, and Tulane. So that may be they might beat Howard and Tulane, I guess. But I
don't know about Tulane. I tell you, Tulane's a sleeper to me.
The Green Wave.
Yes.
Bunch of smart kids.
Well, I tell you, a few years ago, Alabama played them, and Andre Smith was out of the game. But Tulane had a pretty good little ball club, and they gave out. And of course, these teams are going to come out there and play these big schools and give them everything they got. But Tulane, they're not a pushover.
No. They play Penn State week 3 at home, and Michigan, Ohio State, Nebraska, Wisconsin.
They've got a tough schedule.
Indiana, Michigan State, and at Maryland. So
I've got them going 3-9. I can't see them doing much.
You got
this
them
year.
3-9. I'm going to say 2-10. They're going to beat Howard and Indiana. Who have you got them beating besides Howard and Indiana, or who do you have them beating?
Well, I've got a question mark with Tulane, and so that's going to be the turnaround right there.
Well,
but they've got probably one of the toughest conference schedules of anybody.
Yeah,
in their division.
They do. On that whole west side, yeah, they do.
Well, let me ask you this now, Rob. Between that division, we've got Penn State and Michigan State. Which one do you think out of that will take that?
I think Penn State will.
I do too. I do too. I just
But
think
they
it's
have. This is
Franklin.
their last year of probation, so they can't go to the championship game. So I guess Michigan State will go to the.
Yeah, if
the
it comes down
championship
between
game.
the two of them. But you know in your heart, if Michigan State gets beat by them, though, it's kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah, and next year Penn State, they right now for the 2015 recruiting class,
They're in the top 5.
they're in the top
aren't they?
5, and they're still on probation, and the recruits know that.
Yes, but they want to go to Penn State.
Well,
and that's how you get it. I mean,
hey, I'm telling you, they're going to be back up there
they sure
in the
are.
mix. When they come off probation, they're going to hit it wide open. Let's move over to the West Division. Illinois, who's I haven't heard anything of them since Juice was their quarterback a couple of years ago.
And Ron Zook took over.
Oh, Lord,
yeah.
the fighting Zooks.
Oh Lord, yes.
They open up with Youngstown State, which could be a loss for Illinois.
Well, I got Western Kentucky beating them in the second game.
It could be, yes, I agree.
I got Washington beating them.
Yeah.
I believe they might beat Texas State, but I mean that's iffy right there too because that's probably going to be a lot of good high school ball players.
Yeah.
And you can't. I never pass on a Texas team.
I wonder if Youngstown State and Texas State are paying Illinois to play them.
They might be. It might be Illinois makes all the money.
That was their non-conference games. Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, Washington, and Texas State. Then they get into their conference schedule, and they have a pretty tough one, too.
They sure do.
They have Nebraska, Purdue, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State, and Northwestern.
And I don't see them winning any of those games, and it'll be a good game between Purdue and Illinois.
Yeah.
That's the throw-up one right there.
The winner of that game will be next to last in the Big Ten.
Exactly.
Illinois really doesn't have anything coming back either. Their coach is talking big, but said he has a detailed plan for a successful 2014 season. They said they have a very young football team again, but said they've got to win more football games. They know that.
But
And,
they're not putting any pressure on him. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, if he could get a 6-win season, I believe he'd get an extension.
Well, they're saying more than 4 wins will be an improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I've got him at 5-7, so I've got him improving.
well, then we got
Iowa. I've got them at 6-6. I mean, I can't see them doing much. They're going to beat Northern Iowa. They'll beat Ball State, I believe.
Ball State was a 10-win
Yeah.
team last
And-
year.
Well, they do play them at home, and I think they'll. Iowa State will beat them.
Then they're at Pittsburgh. That's their 4 non-conference games: Northern Iowa, Ball State, Iowa State, and Pittsburgh. And then they get into their
They'll beat Purdue.
yeah.
They'll beat Indiana. They'll beat Maryland. They'll lose to Northwestern, Minnesota. They'll beat Illinois, lose to Wisconsin and Nebraska.
I agree. Iowa's, they finished 8-5 last year, 5-3 in the Big Ten. More than half of the Big Ten has got some kind of quarterback issue going into this spring, but the kid they had last year at Iowa is coming back, and he completed 59% of his passes for 2,383 yards and 18 touchdowns. Had 13 interceptions. It's going to be between him and a C.J. Beathard to see who's going to be the quarterback for them this year. But other than that, Iowa, and their coach, I kind of like their coach. He's always you never hear a lot from him, but you never hear a lot about the Iowa program getting in trouble. So
Yes,
I guess he's
doing his job.
doing his job.
And it's probably hard to recruit. I mean, it's got to be tough to recruit there. I mean, most of the schools in that conference, it's got to be hard to recruit good ball players. I mean, most of the time you have to go out of conference to do it.
Yeah. Then we have Minnesota and Jerry Keel, who got a raise, as you mentioned earlier this year, or during this off season. There's been a lot of people criticizing him for even staying in coaching because of his epileptic seizures that he has, but
Everybody's got to work.
everybody has to work, right?
And I think that's wrong to do that to him.
Well, he got a contract extension that adds at 1 year, and it runs through the 2018-19 season and we'll pay him $2.1 million for the 2014-15 season. And Coach Keel, what he's doing at Minnesota is working.
Well, he's in the top half.
Yeah.
You've got that bottom half and you got that top half, and he's a win or two away from a championship.
Yeah.
I mean, 8-5 last year, 4-4, but he cut out a couple of those losses, and he's right there in the mix.
Well, it's the one thing that everybody or the people at Minnesota like him for is, especially the president and everybody there at the university, is they recorded a 994 academic progress rate, which is the highest single score that Minnesota football team's ever had.
Probably one of the highest in the country.
Yeah. And only 10 teams have had a higher score since the NCAA has made those single scores available. So, getting it done in the classroom too. And I've heard the guy talk and speak, and he does have those epileptic episodes, but hey, he's a good guy, and he's doing the job that they need to do in Minnesota. Then we have somebody else that got a raise this year for some reason. Bob
Pelini of Nebraska.
At Nebraska, old Bo.
Well, I tell you, I've got them at a 10-2 season this year. I really do. I think they've got a chance this year. I looked at their schedule, and I'm thinking they've got a good shot at it.
Well, their non-conference games: Florida Atlantic, McNeese State, Fresno State, and Miami. So those are all winnable games.
They're probably 3-0 going into Miami, and Miami, they're an iffy team. I think Nebraska will take them and be 4-0 at that point.
You never can tell about Miami what they're going to bring to the field.
Well, it depends on who's in jail and who's not.
Where's that game at? I don't have that in front of me.
They play that in Nebraska.
So
yes, that's in Nebraska. So I'm giving Nebraska the win there, 4-0.
Well, according to the contract he signed, Bo Pelini signed in 2012, he'll receive a $100,000 raise on this year, and that will take his annual salary from $2.975 million to $3.075 million. Pelini is 57-24 in 6 seasons at Nebraska. Former athletic director Tom Osborne extended Pelini's contract through February of 2018 before he retired in December. So
Tom likes him, and I like Tom.
I like Tom Osborne.
Oh, and by the way, I think Nebraska will be 5-0 because they got Illinois after Miami, and then we're going to have a showdown between Michigan State and Nebraska. That'll be a good ball game right there. And that will be at Michigan State.
Well, they finished 9-4 last year, 5-3 in the Big Ten. They won their bowl game against Georgia, 24-19, in the Capital One Bowl last year. Being the best football program in the Big Ten is not as big a challenge as being the best in the country, but I still think they got a long way to go before they get even to winning the Big Ten. Now, they could win that West Division.
Because I think the West is the weaker division.
It is.
And not taking anything away from you, Nebraska, but you need all the help you can get.
Well, now they have a running back coming back. They're Amir Abdullah. He's from Homewood.
Yes.
And he's coming back, and he's put on some bulk. I saw a picture of him yesterday, and he's put on some bulk and some muscle, and he was pretty tough last year. So I think he's going to be a tough game this year. And then they have the quarterback that started the last part of the season for him last year, Tommy Armstrong.
And he looked good.
And he looked good, and they said he stepped up to be a big leader this spring, and so they're looking for big things from him.
And Nebraska's one of those teams, because they've been around so long, you'd like to see them do good. I mean, you'd like to see teams like that come back and stay in the mix. Notre Dame disappeared for years, and now they're back. They still got a lot to do, but they're back, and you like to see those traditional teams keep playing,
We'll be back right after this. Well, football season's over, and it's everybody's favorite season now. It's tax season. Hey, go by and see our friends Conan Smith PC in Rainbow City, Alabama, for all your accounting needs, your corporate, partnership, individual income tax preparation, your monthly payroll, and accounting services. Go by and see them at 3421 Rainbow Parkway, Rainbow City, Alabama. Or give them a call at 256-413-3057.
Mom, Dad, this is John Kroll from Big Oak Ranch. On the day that child was given to you by the Lord, the clock started. In reality, the lifetime you have with your child is actually the 2-minute drill to eternity. Our children are counting on us to show them the way. In our recent book called The 2-Minute Drill, we go over a way to take a young boy and turn him into a man. So many times in today's society, our boys get mixed messages about what a real man looks like. One day, he's going to have a family of his own. He's going to have to stand on his own 2 feet. He's going to have to know what real manhood is, not what society dictates, but what you, as his parent, has taught him. Choose wisely. He's counting on you to show him the way.
To learn more about preparing your child for the 2-minute drill of life, visit bigoak.org/manhood.